money and finance is one of the biggest stressors in people's lives. But if you started off right from a young age and you put the right things in place, and you sacrifice a little bit early on and don't overspend and put yourself in a horrible financial position. And if you did that and started young enough, put money in consistently enough, and let that time horizon compounding do the rest, you will win.
As we all know, money is important. Knowing how to manage your personal finances is perhaps one of the most important skills that you can learn in life. But the problem is, how do we learn this skill? The fact that financial literacy is not taught to youth is one of the biggest flaws in school systems historically. My name is Kinshal Kaur, and I'm the founder and president of Project WealthWise, a youth-led nonprofit dedicated to financially educating young people everywhere. This is the Project WealthWise podcast, and today you're going to learn how anyone, especially the young people of today and beginners, can prosper in wealth building and money management. This is our debut episode, and today we are joined by Brian Lessinger, founder of the Complete Money Playbook.
Thank you so much, Brian, for being here. We're really honored to have you here with us today. So, could you please give a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Brian Lessinger. I've been a real estate agent for the last 25 plus years here in Northern Nevada, but I also have a degree in finance and economics. And so, with having a couple kids in their 20s, I've been spending a lot of time talking with my friends and family about all things money and finance. And I'm always shocked how little people know. So it started turning into a little more coaching and teaching. And now with my Complete Money Playbook YouTube channel, that's how you found me through TikTok. It's really just trying to put that information out there so people can learn about this stuff. And so it's just something I like to do. Something I'm passionate about. And because I sit in so many living rooms talking with people about their money and finance, it's just something that sort of naturally started to happen for me. So yeah, it's just something I like to do.
That's amazing. And I totally agree with you on the part of not enough people know about finance, especially young people. I'm
Absolutely.
just astounded at how many young people don't know about this stuff.
It, it's it, it like you said, it's just a few basic starting fundamental principles that if they knew those, not the complicated, more down the road kind of stuff, but some early on principles that they could learn young enough, whether it's middle school, high school, or even younger, that would set you on the path so that you're not in your 20s and 30s and 40s really struggling financially. Now, there's always going to be financial struggle in people's lives, but you can make it so much easier on yourself if you just learn some basic fundamentals.
Of course, of course. So sort of, extending off of what you just said, how did you get started on your personal finance and growth journey?
Well, it's funny because a lot of this happened by accident and tricks that my dad used to play on us when we were really little that we didn't know any better. And so it's funny as you get older and you start teaching your own kids, you start realizing some of the things that my dad did to sort of trick us into learning about money and finance. And so, as an example, the one I talk about all the time is my dad used to have a little change bucket. My parents were divorced, so when we would go visit them, we used to be able to count up the money in the change bucket. We would take some of it and deposit in the bank. Some of it we would get to spend. And I think it's really important, especially for young people, to have some of their own money and understand what spending their own money feels like, because especially in today's world, everything is a debit and a credit. And if you get paid, it's direct deposit. And so no one ever feels their money kind of going in and out. And so I think the more that you can actually learn what things cost and how they work and just basic stuff like that, it's really helpful. And it doesn't matter. I think the younger, the better. There's always things you can learn, even if you're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old.
For sure, for sure. So that sort of leads on to the next question. At what specific age do you think that young people should start to learn about personal finance?
Well, the younger the better. I mean, you can start off really young and learn some really basic stuff. But as you get a little bit older to the point where you're more in that 13, 14, 15-year-old range where you could start to make some money, you might not have a regular job that you're going and collecting a paycheck. But if you're already now doing window washing or landscaping or babysitting or dog walking, and you can start to make some money, that's a good skill to learn, of course, how to make money. And then being able to save and invest some and spend some so that you get into that habit of you might not actually have bills yet. You might have things you're responsible for, but you'll have a way to start learning that what it feels like to earn it, to put it in your hands, to touch it, to spend a little, and then save and invest and learn how that whole process works. So you can do this hopefully while you're not in any debts and you don't have any credit cards or car loans or things that get people into trouble a little bit later on, and understand how those things work so that you're starting from ground zero rather than from a negative position. And I think that the younger, I mean, there's no way, there's no too young of an age to learn this stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah, of course, I agree. Sort of like you can learn basics in elementary school, then build upon that in middle school, and then when you get
Yes.
to high school, really start to get into it. So sort of stacking your learning as you go.
Exactly. And people I think focus so much on trying to figure out how to make a lot of money. And obviously you can get ahead financially the more money you make. But if you make a lot of money and you don't understand basic fundamentals, you can get yourself in more trouble because you get into more debt, have more toys, have more payments, and they'll issue more credit. So then you can get yourself in a lot more trouble. So the answer isn't always just how do I make more? It's understanding once I'm making money, what I need to do with it. And then as you make more, if you can do smart things, then you're really going to be able to start winning at this game.
Yes, of course. So next I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what do you believe are the benefits of investing for youth specifically?
Well, for me, it was one of those things where as you're starting to make money, I was taught you want your money to make money. So you're not always trading your time for money. So most people, you go to work, you have a job, you got to put in hours to make that money. But over time, if you can figure out how to save, invest, and buy assets that go up in value, or figure out ways to then own businesses or own anything where your money makes money, where I don't have to show up and go to work for it, then that's where things start to exponentially grow. And so, understanding how all this works, understanding brokerage accounts and investments, and again, basic early starter stuff, not complicated, more heavy duty stuff. As you make more, then really the numbers will get bigger, but you'll understand how the whole process works and how to eventually, like, instead of giving yourself a bunch of I can afford the payments, you give yourself the ability to own assets that create revenue. So like every month I make lots of side money for stuff that I really am not having to focus a lot of my time on. And that's the skill that people have to understand.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. I think when it comes to investing, sometimes, people can feel overwhelmed, like, oh, there's so much to know. I don't think I'll be able to handle all of this. But I think it's really a matter of just not having the proper resources in order to
Mhm.
learn, rather
Well, and
than,
like you said, it's just meeting people that are a little bit further down the road than you are, and trying to get as much knowledge as you can from them. The nice part for you younger people now is between Chat GPT or all these AI services, between the internet, between just going and meeting people that you think already kind of have the answer to these questions. You have a lot of resources that we didn't have when I was a kid, that you can go meet anyone anywhere. You and I live in different countries and we met each other online. This would have never been something we could have done when I was your age. And so it's figuring out how those things work and then just putting the things in place. And if you do, like I always say, if you do the basic fundamentals and you do that first, and then you're over here on the side wanting to try to hit some home runs by starting businesses or doing crypto or buying individual stocks or doing things that are a little more high risk, great. But as long as you're doing this stuff first, then you're going to win over here. And this is you trying to hustle things along. I'm not a big fan of that part of it, but I know a lot of people are. And if they want to take on a little more risk, that's great. But you got to do the smart things first. And then, it just all starts to work in your favor. But, as those numbers start to grow, the hardest part, I think, for younger people is those numbers feel so small at first and the time horizon feels so long that they might do it from the time they're your age till they're 25 or 35 or something like that. And then they give up or they borrow the money from their 401k or they do something silly and now they're starting over in their 30s and 40s rather than just letting that time happen for them. And so you just have to be careful and patient with all of this.
yeah, for sure. If you go back again to the story of the tortoise and the hare, slow and steady wins
Yes.
the race.
Yeah, it's funny. I use the tortoise and the hare reference all the time. Yeah, that's pretty funny you said that.
Yeah, yeah. I think, that lesson connects to so many aspects in finance, and not many people realize that again.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's why if you ever go tell people, go play with an investment calculator. And like I told you, we talked before, I got a bunch of 13-year-old boys that I work with on a monthly basis. And now they're on a little quarterly project and they all open up brokerage accounts and they're all still making money and they're all starting to invest. And it's funny at the age of 13, how little money they will have to put in their accounts. Or the time they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s, it will be millions and millions and millions of dollars. The hard part is when you're playing that slow and steady, be the tortoise, not the hare, or be the hare, tortoise, not the hare, and you're playing this game that might be 30, 40, 50, 60 years. It is so hard to be patient and not, somewhere along the lines dip into those monies or overspend or do things that aren't smart. And it's just, you just go play with that investment calculator. It's crazy what those numbers will show you.
yes, for sure. Now, when it comes to setting up financial habits for the future, how do you believe that people who do not actively earn a salary can still learn how to manage money?
Well, we touched it briefly. If you don't earn a salary, and let's say you're someone who's under 16 that is just finding a way to make money on the side, you also have no bills and you have no overhead, ideally. So what you just have to figure out ways that you can earn money. And then once you're earning money, I always say, like, for people that are making a paycheck, you want to invest at least 20% off the top. But if you have no overhead, you might decide you want to do 30 or 40 or 50%. And so if you make $100, put 50 away, take the other 50 and go and spend it. So you get to do a little bit of both. But I'm telling you, if you start off and you're 10, 12, 14 years old and you are literally putting $50 a month away, it's shocking how 50 years time, it's a crazy amount of money. So it's just learning how to make some money. And it's just that habit of hard work and going out and looking for work and talking to neighbors and figuring out maybe from your parents what you might be able to do to earn a little bit of money. That's step number one. And then some basic, which we'll talk about here in a minute, some basic saving and investing things that people should do.
Yeah, that is wonderful advice, definitely. So what I want to ask you next was what is the most powerful place, in your opinion, like an account or type of investment that a teenager earning money from, say, a part-time job can put this money into in order to maximize their earnings?
So there's a couple of places. The basic place to start off, if you're a regular traditional bank or a lot of online banks, you'll just get a high yield savings account and try to earn 3, 4, 5% interest. But eventually, I think everybody needs to open up a brokerage account. And a brokerage account can be opened at a Fidelity, a Charles Schwab, a Vanguard. There's lots of companies you can open these at. And through those, then you can do what's called a money market account, which is like kind of their version of a high yield savings. But then you can start to learn things about individual stocks and ETFs and mutual funds and low cost index funds and understanding it doesn't have to be complicated. You can just mirror something that mirrors the entire stock market and leave it alone. And if you did that, and you just stayed in these low cost index funds and just started young enough, put money in consistently enough, and let that time horizon compounding do the rest, you will win. I mean, it's really that simple. And I would say if we're doing those things with, let's say, 20% off the top of our incomes and we're living on the 80% and we're not going into debt, you can't help but win. And as you make more, those numbers will grow. And if all of a sudden you find a way to say, okay, I'm doing the 20% off the top, and of the 80% left over, you say you want to take 5 or 10% and go try to hit home runs and be a little more risk taker, by all means do that if you're willing to take that risk, but that's a little more sketchy to me. But if you're doing the fundamentals first, you're gonna be just fine.
Yes, for sure. And again, if we're coming back to that slow and steady point, then
Yep.
I don't think many people realize that if you let time be on your side instead of trying to fight against it by sort of rushing, then it's going to benefit you so much more in the future.
Well, it's exactly what you say. And if people don't understand how car loans and credit cards and mortgages and all these ways you can borrow money, there's a reason why the money you borrow, they're charging you exponentially higher interest rates than on money that you earn on your investments. So if you are in debt and you have car payments and credit cards, all these things, it's really hard to catch up because some of those are, credit cards can be upwards of 30 plus percent. I don't know any investments that you're going to make 30% on. So you're going to play a losing game, but you nailed it on the head. It's just staying out of debt, doing the stuff off the top. And if you're living on the rest, just don't go into debt. Just live off what you make, live within your means, pay yourself first, stay within your budget, and you can't help but win. It's not what everybody does, but there's a reason why a lot of people are in terrible financial situations. And if you do these things, you will win. You will win.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. So what I want to ask you next is, how could a teenager who may not need to necessarily follow budgeting plans as they live at home, their parents cover the expenses, how could they practice budgeting anyway in order to set up habits for the future?
Well, some of that would be having some conversations with your parents. So if a lot of kids these days, let's say you have some subscriptions or a cell phone or a few other things, maybe you're doing household chores, it's just part of you living in the house, and maybe you're getting a little bit of allowance, or you're also earning some side hustle money, whether it's mowing lawns or babysitting, like we talked about. I think if you learn the habit of earning some money, pulling some off the top, doing the savings investing we're talking about, and then you live on the rest, great. And if the rest of that money means you're going to buy yourself new shoes or jeans or whatever it might be, at least you're spending your own money, and then just don't overspend what you have. So you can learn those basic fundamentals of a budget even without actually having, actual bills, but at least you're starting to learn the process of I earn some, I save, invest some, I get to spend a little. And right now your budget is really open because you don't have a lot of overhead. But some kids, by the time they turn 16, part of it is their parents are making them pay for their subscriptions or their car insurance or whatever those things might be. So you might have a little bit of a budget, But if you just start there on those basic fundamentals, that's how you're going to figure this out, understand how all this starts to work for you.
Yes, absolutely. What I want to ask you next is, in your opinion, do you believe the teenagers or young adults who might live with their parents stand in a better or a worse position to learn about finance? And better because, they can take more risk, they might be able to experiment with their money, but worse because A, they might have limited education since they're living at home, and also because if they take too much risk, then this could set up risky financial habits for their future selves.
Well, I think regardless of what your situation is, everything now is learnable as long as you have one of these, right? So if you have one of these, you can learn anything you want, anywhere you want. And sometimes actually living at home with parents, you learn a lot of stuff that you shouldn't do, but you don't know you shouldn't do it because your parents might be in a terrible financial position. And it's funny how many times I talk to young people, and part of why they're coming to talk to me is their parents are tragic financially. They don't understand what they're doing. And they're like, I need to learn this from somebody. And so you just happen to be the person I reached out to learn this from. There's a million people that you can learn these things from. And I always just say, go ask the questions to people that look wealthy or maybe sound wealthy or that maybe know what they're doing. There's a million places online that you can find people like myself that are trying to share this information. And I don't think it matters if you know, live in a dual parent home, a single parent home. You live with your mom, your dad, your grandparents, or you live on your own and you're 20 years old. Everything is learnable. Everything is online anymore. It's just a matter of trying to find the right people and the right trustworthy information so that you're learning it. Now, again, everyone's going to be a little bit different. Some people are more risk taker than others. And so for me, because I'm a little more conservative, I let people know, hey, there are a little bit riskier things you could do and could try, but that's up to you. That's your risk tolerance. And a lot of that's based upon age and where you live and what your life situation is and those kind of things. But I really think that doesn't matter. Everything in today's world is learnable. There's really no excuses.
Yeah, of course. And especially because, like you said earlier, we have AI, we have the internet, we have finance
Yeah,
books.
yeah, everywhere. I mean, I've got them sitting on my shelves, and then every time you start to learn more fundamentals, you just go up to the next level and you learn a few more and you learn a few more. And this is something that you honestly should be learning your entire life because it's like nutrition. You always have to eat. So you want to learn more about nutrition, you want to learn that for your whole life because what you could eat when you were 20 may not be what you could eat when you're 50. So these are like certain topics. Money and finance and nutrition are ones I compare a lot. Those are things you just kind of have to know and you have to keep learning your entire life.
For sure, for sure. The final question I want to ask you is if you could suggest any one financial habit that a young person could start today in order to maximize their future financial success, what would that habit be?
So it's going to be these same old fundamentals. It's first learning how to make some money, learning to pull some money and pay yourself first off the top, living within your means, not overspending, and not going into consumer debt. And if you just did those four things and you learn those as well, and then you just kept trying to learn as much as you could about money and finance, whether it's podcasts, books, online, find some people, especially in your local area, like meet some people in person, take them to breakfast, take them to lunch, ask the questions. There are no dumb questions. Because I know for me, you're asking me questions. I go to other people and I ask them questions that are at a level above where I'm at. And so it's just this continual game of trying to learn more and more and more because then the game changes. 30, 40 years ago, there was no crypto, there were no ETFs. So things change. I mean, you really go further back. I mean, it's only been 50 something years, 60 years where a woman could get a mortgage on her own. You literally couldn't do it. You couldn't get a credit card. So things will continually change. And in your lifetime, in my lifetime, they'll continue to change. So it's just this continual game of learning, but you got to learn those basic fundamentals first. And that's where I would tell everybody to start.
Yes, of course. And learning is, of course, a lifetime process. Like you said,
Mhm.
in life in general, you keep learning things about nutrition, definitely about finance. You can't learn
Yes.
everything about finance because there's always going to be no, new, updates and technology in society and just things that you had no idea about that you might stumble upon like years and years later.
It's crazy because even if you want to travel, many countries you go to, it's a different currency, it's different money, it works differently. So, there's just lots of things over your lifetime that you start to figure out. And the more that you can take this stressor, because I think money and finance is one of the biggest stressors in people's lives. But if you started off right from a young age and you put the right things in place, and you sacrifice a little bit early on and don't overspend and put yourself in a horrible financial position, then as there are bumps in the road, and there will always be bumps in the road, whether you lost your job or you're not making as much as you think, or life circumstances come up, you'll have money put to the side in order to take care of all these things. so that, it doesn't freak you out every time those things happen. So yeah, it's just an ongoing learning game forever. And the younger and earlier you can start, the better.
Yes, of course. So I think we'll wrap it up there for today. Thank you so much for being here. The advice and insights you shared were amazing, and I myself found this to be an extremely valuable experience. And I'm sure any young person or anyone in general watching this will have learned a lot today. So thank you. We're really honored to have you here.
You're very welcome. Happy to do it. If everyone's looking to follow my information, it's all on either TikTok or YouTube. It's all under Complete Money Playbook or my name, Brian Lessinger. So share the links, come ask questions. I'm happy to answer them and, go from there. I appreciate you having me on. And hopefully in the future, as you have more questions and things, you can reach out to me anytime.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode. I hope you gained as much knowledge as I did from this session, and if you are serious about your financial success, especially as a young person, make sure to follow us. Our next episode is already in the making. Thank you so much to everyone who's supporting our mission of financially educating youth everywhere, and I will see you in the next episode.